Last week's college football sweetheart, that's right, the UCLA Bruins. They're looking to play spoiler on homecoming in East Lansing against a Michigan State team that, we could use a win to turn some vibes around here, Zach.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans and Locked On UCLA is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Spartan friends, Spartan family, also all the way over on the West Coast. You lovely UCLA fans, how on earth are we all doing on a crossover episode of Locked On Spartans? And, of course, Locked On UCLA. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below your thoughts going into this game because Zach Anderson Yoxsimer of Locked On UCLA. We talked about this right before we started recording, but boy, howdy, 7-10 days ago, this seems like a game where, UCLA 0-6. S&P Plus will have this as a 17-ish point spread. Michigan State, they'll probably take a loss at Nebraska, but surely it won't look like a comedy of errors at the very least. But my God, how things can change in a dime in the world of college football. You guys stunned the world. You beat Penn State under a new offense that was basically installed the morning of the game. Michigan State, yes, we lose against Nebraska, but we did it by choking away a lead in the fourth quarter with a myriad of special teams blunders, coaching gaffes, and absolutely no blocking for Aidan Chiles. We need a vibe change over here in East Lansing. But Zach, genuinely, what is the vibe at UCLA like? Like, are you guys... Are you back? Are you going to a bowl game now? Like, take me into the mind of a Bruin fan right now, because what a year it's been for you guys.
I mean, it went from this is the worst team UCLA's ever fielded to maybe the biggest upset in UCLA history. And I mean,
Probably.
We're not that far removed from UCLA being a top 10 Texas team, not that far removed from 2006 where UCLA upset a number 2 USC team, knocking them out of the national championship game. Now, if you go back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the Bruins are taking out Alabama, taking down the Ohio States of the world. But to beat Penn State, and they competed with Oregon on a national stage, and Oregon's supposed to be really, really good. The Bruins had showcased zero hope. They had no leads. They didn't lead until that first touchdown drive in a single game against New Mexico, against UNLV, Utah.
Wow.
Wait, what was that? Northwestern, all down at least 3 scores in those games. 3 scores. Wow. And they go to Penn State and they jump up 20. Now, they're aggressive early, but the way you look at the numbers and how they're physical up front, it kind of makes it think that UCLA could be for real, that they can compete. And it didn't seem like UCLA was competitive in those first few games of the season, but this is almost much-watched television. If you watch the Big Ten numbers when they played Northwestern on the Big Ten Network, there was maybe 100,000 people watching that game. Obviously, it's one of the worst teams in the Big Ten and Northwestern, and at the time, UCLA for sure. Mm-hmm. And you thought this might be a matchup between Michigan State and UCLA. That's forgotten about. No, now the eyes are going to be on UCLA. Can they repeat this performance? Maybe not as much as the Penn State game, but the vibes are high. Even if they go 1-11, that's the moment. But let's not go 1-11.
What would a win Saturday do? And I understand it is a far cry from the cachet of beating a Penn State, right? Like, I don't think you'd be knocking us out of the college football playoff, so to speak. I hope I'm not upsetting too many Michigan State fans with that admission, but truly, like, if you get 2 in a row here, are you starting to think bowl game is beating Michigan State just like not what it used to be anymore? And you could be honest, you could upset me. I don't really care.
I think it's a huge game. Obviously, it doesn't have the same, big game mentality that it was for Penn State coming into town. Anytime you host a top 10 team at home, prime time in the Rose Bowl, no less, you expect that to be a big game. Mm-hmm. UCLA, the players, the staff, they turned it into a big game because obviously the crowd hasn't come and supported them just yet. You beat Michigan State, it's huge. Even though it's a Sparty team that's hovering around bowl eligibility, obviously with the jokes about the CFP, if UCLA beats Sparty, then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, this is consistently happening over 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 games, because the Bruins outplayed Northwestern in the second half and just couldn't come back. This would be almost 2.5 games worth of consistent play with a new identity. If they don't win, I would think that puts a bowl out of the question. If they win, there's a possibility. And last year, UCLA did the same thing. 1-5, looked horrible, and then we're flirting with the bowl by the time the last 3 weeks of the season came around. Although completely different circumstances, that could be something that happens with a win. But what about for Michigan State?
Oh boy, if you get a win here, I mean UCLA, if UCLA gets a win here, that'd be back-to-back mutinies that you have caused amongst fan bases, because I don't think Penn State fans are necessarily too thrilled with James Franklin. And look, Zach, the vibes haven't been trending in the right direction here for Michigan State. Now, I don't think as drastic as James Franklin, but there are people that are becoming less and less sold on the Jonathan Smith experience here at Michigan State, and I can go on and talking about why that's right or wrong. Yes, it's going to be a rebuild. Yes, it's going to take some time. However, I got pretty upset after the Nebraska game because we're not even seeing like good on-field coaching, despite all the issues that he has to clean up from previous regimes. Like, control what you can control, Jonathan Smith, and he didn't even do that last game. He botched the whole offensive tackle situation last week. Special teams blunders were all over the place, and it comes out after the game, after watching our quarterback get mauled for all 60 minutes of that game. Someone asked him, actually friend of the program, Stephen Brooks, does wonderful things at 24/7 Sports. He asked him, just thinking of making a change at the offensive tackle position, and Jonathan Smith said, we didn't see any glaring issues there. Zach, I saw some glaring issues from my couch here in sunny Metro Detroit, Michigan. How
Let me tell you, the
offensive
offensive line can switch in a week. UCLA had some glaring issues, and all of a sudden they pounded the rock on Penn State. But hey, I'm just going to say, Matt, you're making a great case for Jonathan Smith to be the next UCLA coach. Problems, rebuild, let's just draw it in the tank. Bring it on. Bring it on. Like, you're making a great case. Bring it to Pasadena and Westwood.
I know. So a UCLA win, like, people are already like, Jonathan Smith going into the season, and then you lose to USC, a very good USC team. You get some fans that are starting to come on the side of, okay, I'm not seeing the vision. After Nebraska, the meter's starting to tick a little bit too far over. If you lose to UCLA, no disrespect, but this is just also what the numbers are saying to you. This is the last team that you will be favored against the rest of the season. Now, obviously, things can change, but a lot of these other games from Michigan State, like, you are touchdown plus underdogs. This is the last on-paper game you were favored in. If you lose to this one, that is against a team coming off an emotional high win that is also going to be playing at 9 a.m., your body clock. On
huge.
Your team's homecoming. Oh, Zach, I know that you guys had a great win against Penn State last week, but that would be inexcusable. Oh, there's going to be some shouting on Locked On Spartans if that happens, whereas, like, if you win, I'm sorry, it's just like, that's what you're supposed to do here against a team that you're favored against. So it's a tough spot for the program to be in. If you beat UCLA, woo, yeah, great. Awesome. If you lose, torches, pitchforks, everywhere in the streets of East Lansing. But look, Zach, I mean, really quick before we cut it to a break here, which one of them will be FanDuel? So I'm going to ask the question right now at the time of recording. Michigan State favored by 8.5 points. Like I said, S&P plus last week before the Penn State game even started, this could have been like a 14, 17-point spread. Right now, sitting at 8.5. Does that seem right to you? Or do you think it should be a little closer,
so. If that game was a little later in the day, maybe. But with it being a 9 a.m. body clock kick for UCLA, you come off the emotional high. As my father always tells me, what comes up must come down. You know, the ebbs and the flows of the season. Tim Skipper's a good coach to get UCLA fired up. But it took Penn State to come into the Rose Bowl, and that's pretty easy when you have everything. You have nothing to lose. UCLA lost everything. They came through, and they got a big win. So they have to prove that they can do it. And now they showcase what they're doing with the new offense. There's no surprises, if you will. Somebody's going to spy Nico, which we can talk about. I think 8.5 is fair. But, hey, if you smell a good Bruin team coming into, East Lansing, you can make some money. Just like if you picked UCLA to cover against Penn State and then hedged your bet with Penn State plus 5.5 late in that game, you could have gotten both ends of that and made some big bucks on FanDuel. Yeah.
Every week on Locked On Spartans, at the end of the week, I do 5 best bets. And the last 2 years, like, we've been in the black. It's been all good in the hood. But, Zach, last 2 weeks I've been a combined 1-9. But that one,
what?
That's right, UCLA, plus 25.5. So thank you for being my one shiny moment the last 2 weeks, UCLA. Good on you guys. We will talk about your Bruins here. I'm going to grill you about UCLA in the second segment. Then we'll return the favor. You grill me about Michigan State in the third segment. But first, you need to talk your ears off about Supply House. That's right, guys. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? Well, look at this, guys. Supply House, they have next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. So what are you waiting for out there? Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5. All one word, SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Also, guys, we just talked about it. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. They're keeping Saturdays popping. They're keeping Sundays, Mondays, any day there's football on, or any sport for that matter. Yes, they're keeping it more exciting. And when it's the NFL season here, FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss right now. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet. Put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Guys, just for example, same game parlays, they are going to be available for the Saturday's game, or my personal favorite, first-time touchdown score. Last week, I took Jack Velling at 50-1, Michigan State's first tight end, and while it didn't hit, I will be looking for that value again for this upcoming weekend. But guys, if there's a Bruin that you like, if there's a Spartan that you like, odds are you'll be able to find them over at FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, Zach, let's start with the man, the myth, the legend, Nico. Everyone knows how to pronounce his last name. I don't need to do it. So let's just call him Nico, the quarterback for UCLA. Is he did he have a rebirth last Saturday, or was that a mirage? Well, just putting a single spy on him, as you said in the first segment, let's just solve all the problems for Michigan State this Saturday if they choose to do so.
And if you watch that game between the Bruins and Penn State, repeatedly the broadcast was like, where's the spy? Why are they just letting Nico just run? He just kept running and running. There's nobody spying him. And
right.
While Penn State did have some injuries, Tony Rojas was a huge loss in their linebacker room. And I think they had another linebacker injury during the game.
Gotcha.
They also didn't expect it. Like, this wasn't Nico doing this again and again. He showcased it, but it's like sometimes I hear quarterbacks get told, don't run. And then they're kind of like, just go for it. Now there's a new play caller. UCLA hired Noel Mazzoni, an offensive analyst, former UCLA offensive coordinator. So the Bruins maybe shifted offensive game plans that could have favored any play calls that could keep Nico upright, or told him, run. If you're in danger, just run. And Penn State said, you can do this again and again and again. He ran it 16 times to the tune of 128 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, he already was the leading rusher for UCLA, but it was different from like scrambling for your life, which he still did in this game, to having like big time baller runs, like stiff arming, spinning around, breaking tackles, third down, 50-yard runs where he literally carried the team on his back. Now there are gaping holes for him and the other running backs, but it looked legit. Like, this is something Nico can do. I just wonder, with a little game planning, will he run all over Michigan State? I think he's always been this. It's just, can he be kept upright? And will he hit those throws down the field, which he did at Quasi Gilmer early in the game?
One thing I'm just so fascinated from a Michigan State standpoint is that our defensive front has looked like dead even going into last year as it pertains to rushing the passer. But Nebraska made us look great last week. It was 4 or 5 sacks for our Spartans, a number that we haven't seen against a Power 4 team in quite some time. So this UCLA offensive line, can they also make Michigan State look good? Or, unfortunately, is the UCLA offensive line also decent despite the early season struggles?
I would lean on the side of UCLA can make any defensive line look like they're going to the NFL draft.
Let's
like,
go.
like not just 7th round, like first round picks, kind of. That's how they look the first 4 weeks. But then when they play the Penn State, the guys who could potentially be those guys or developing those guys, UCLA ran for almost 300 yards in Penn State. Ran for almost 300 yards on Penn State. If you take away the negative rushing yards for UCLA and a couple sacks, they did run for over 300 yards. If you take away the negative plays, now obviously you have to balance this out. But that means all the positives UCLA did, they took it to a physical Penn State team. Now that was a shocker. It wasn't the fact that Nico played well. Nico has a lot of talent. He's clearly had it. He's been criticized by myself, by everybody in the country, literally, for the decision. The talent's been there, but it hit perfectly. And I think UCLA made some good play calls. The shocking thing was UCLA's physicality. And this is why it's going to be interesting in this game against Sparty. I don't know if this is repeatable for the Bruins? If it is, then UCLA will make a lot more games entertaining, because the first 4 games, they were somewhat embarrassing. Against Penn State, they went up by 20, and that wasn't necessarily a fluke. They dominated and held their own in the trenches. And to win Big Ten games, you have to do so, whether it's against Penn State, Michigan State, or even Northwestern. And the Bruins got eaten alive by Northwestern. Against Penn State, they didn't. So that's really what's going to be the story of the game. Nico can have a lesser game, but if he's being protected, UCLA is going to move the ball.
Really quick, just an injury update for Michigan State. One of our starting defensive ends, David Santiago, there was a picture taken with him, a few Nebraska players, all Hawaiian. That was the theme of the picture, throwing the shakas up. One problem, David Santiago had a walking boot on and crutches in that picture, so we will be seeing if he's going to go. I'm going to go ahead and fetch a guess that he's going to be doubtful, but anyway, moving on. Quasi Gilmer, one-time Michigan State recruiting prospect. Quasi Gilmer, 4-star receiver. Now balling out a little bit for UCLA. Is this the best skill position player that we have to worry about, or is there someone else on the field for the Bruins that might give us heart palpitations on Saturday?
Quasi Gilmer was the guy that reportedly coming into training camp, into fall camp, he had the best connection with Nico. UCLA's best receiver was Rico Flores Jr., who was just returned after a long layoff, got hurt in early 2024, had 100 yards receiving and a touchdown against Hawaii, missed a lot, and then was going to miss this part of the beginning of the 25 season. Had an early catch against Northwestern, had a couple of catches against Penn State, but I think him being back kind of opens things up for 2 other receivers. Quasi Gilmer had a big game, broke a tackle, had an awesome touchdown stretching for the end zone. Titus Mokiao-Atumalala is a guy that, yes, you say that name 10 times fast, you're never going to say it right, but he had a couple of receptions for a touchdown. So I think with Rico Flores Jr. returning, that opens the door for 2 other receivers. Obviously, if you name the whole receiver room, that sounds dumb, but one guy returning, even if he doesn't have the numbers, opens the door for 1 to 2, maybe 3 guys to be open, just because Rico has returned. And I think that has been the case, because Quasi didn't have a good game until this last game. He had a nice performance against UNLV, but the Bruins are coming back. With another big-name receiver in Flores, a former Notre Dame transfer, I think UCLA has more guys that need to be accounted for, and Flores could be a vertical threat. That's been the problem for the Bruins. They can't push it vertical as much this year. And maybe it's Gilmer, maybe it's not, but I would say early bets would be you would want to go Gilmer as a guy Michigan State to look at.
Now, yesterday in Locked On Spartans, I talked about how Michigan State's offense needs a bounce back after their performance against Nebraska, how UCLA could be the perfect time for a get-right spot, and I specifically cited 5 sacks on the whole season. Zach, that is the lowest in the Big Ten. There's only 4 teams in all of FBS that have less sacks than UCLA. Is that the number one glaring issue on the whole team, the pass rush? Is it just that easy?
I would say it was both the O-line and the D-line, because the Bruins couldn't protect, they couldn't run the ball, and then the big thing is the D-line couldn't pass rush last year. They couldn't rush the passer. But then the thing was, the saving grace in 24 was that they had an elite rushing defense. Like, you couldn't run on the Bruins. They would struggle on 3rd and long, teams would move the chains, and then you couldn't run. But the fact that they were so physical, and even though Penn State, had some moments, the Bruins kind of kept Singleton and Katron Allen in check. Now it was embarrassing watching Drew Aller break through the pocket and have big-time runs. Like, there was, when the game was still in the balance and Drew Aller broke what was the game-saving sack and broke out of it for, like, 1st down and right into UCLA into the red zone, it was embarrassing. So I would say Aidan Chiles is a lot more mobile than Drew Aller is. And even Drew Aller could easily break some tackles because the Bruins didn't account for him. They said, you know what? We're going to make sure everybody's accounted for, but Aller makes some plays. So the problem is UCLA isn't good at one or the other, but they handled the plays and they blew up Penn State's 4th down play when it came to, they ran the ball.
Sure did. Yeah.
It was one of the dumber plays I'd ever seen on a 4th down. I feel like if they just ran straight at UCLA, they could have gotten a 1st down, but whatever they called, whatever it went, it didn't work. And they did move the ball against the Bruins in the second half. But it's not like this UCLA defense didn't make plays. They forced a fumble. The defense held up physically in the trenches against Penn State. And of all the teams you would think it's the least likely for that to happen, it was against Penn State. So it's kind of like what UCLA team, Jekyll and Hyde, what's going to show up? If it's that Penn State performance, half of that Penn State performance, this will be a formidable, battle up front. If it's Northwestern, UNLV, all those other teams that push the Bruins around, then Michigan State's going to have a field day.
I hope for that. That'd be great. I need a win, Zach. I want to see a victory. I want to do a post-game victory show. I want just this fan base chilling out for a hot second. Myself included. I'll rope myself into this too. I need to chill out for a second. But we also need to ask about the Spartans here. But first, need to talk everyone's ears off about Mazda. Mazda, they craft cars for those who do simply more than just move, guys. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how they craft every single model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls, and with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It's Mazda, move and be moved. Also, guys, you need to talk your ears off about Quo. One of the tools that is helping make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard us talk about time and time again, but just with a new name. Now, here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline, guys. It is so simple. Whether you're solo, whether you're working for a large team, Quo is going to make it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, again, formerly known as Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockdowncollege. That's QUO.com/lockdowncollege. And if you've got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. It's Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Zach, what do you want to know about our Spartans, our white-hot Spartans?
Well, let's kind of update. What's the quarterback situation like? Michigan State pulled out a couple of QBs against Nebraska. You can go with Aidan Chiles. You can tell us Michigan State also has a quarterback whose name is impossible to say, like Iamaleava is. So bring that up. There's 2 picks from Aidan Chiles, the other Michigan State quarterback. Alessio, did I get that right?
Alessio Milivojevic. That's right.
Yeah, bring it. Tell me the story, and then we're gonna kind of dunk on the Michigan State rushing attack.
The quick story is that there's no quarterback controversy. This will be Aidan Chiles' job. The reason that you saw 2 names in the box score is that Aidan Chiles was murdered by 2 linemen on a play in the second quarter. He came out, could barely walk in a straight line, and for some reason came back into the game. Why not? Sure, that's some crack medical care right there. Anyway, by the time the game was out of hand, we threw Alessio Milivojevic back in, and he looked fine. He looked decent. But here's what Alessio cannot do that you need behind this offensive line. You need a guy that can extend plays. You need a guy that has legs and can, evade pressure, because it happened on 45% of his dropbacks last weekend, Zach. Not great. So that is the story with the quarterbacks. Now, he needs a good bounce-back game, of course. There were a lot of factors I think played into why it was such a bad stat line for Aidan Chiles. First and foremost, just don't think he played great. I have no problem saying that. But also, when you're getting pressure on 45% of your dropbacks, when you are making a bad Nebraska pass rush look like the Purple People Eaters, that's not going to help any quarterback. And the wind was out of control. He was possibly concussed. People have heard me talk long and long about it. No quarterback controversy. It needs to look better. He also needs some help, though, man, because what a horrible showing that was from our offensive line.
And he was sacked 4 times. You look at it, you're like, what? He threw 2 picks. If you look at the numbers, it looks like a quarterback controversy, but in reality, it doesn't seem like that's the case.
100% it does look like it, and it should have been 9 or 10 sacks, honestly. But those were bad picks. I mean, the first one, completely inexcusable. The second one, he had sewn in his back pocket like a wallet because he couldn't breathe for more than a second. But I digress.
Well, I'll let you do more, because this is Aidan Chiles. This is a guy who UCLA saw 2 years ago when Jonathan Smith was at Oregon State. They faced him in Corvallis. Now, it was a little different because it was DJU, the main guy for Jonathan Smith then, and Chiles was the change of pace 1-2 drive guy. I think he did leave a touchdown, did run and get a touchdown drive against the Bruins, mostly running, if I've got that correct. I could be a little wrong. How has he developed now in year 3 under Jonathan Smith, 2 years in East Lansing? Does he look any better? You just talked about had a terrible game against a mediocre Nebraska pass rush. What's the scoop there?
I think he's still way better than he was last year. I mean, a lot of people just want to throw the first 4 games of the season in the garbage bin, and I understand it. I understand the opinion of, oh, you beat Western Michigan. Oh, great, you beat Youngstown State. You beat a Boston College team that looks terrible now. But, like, he also looked decent in a loss against USC. He had 4 touchdowns in both the Boston College game where he played nearly perfect to deliver a win for Michigan State when the defense had no interest of giving Michigan State the win that day. And then looked solid against USC, where he was, just like last week against Nebraska, facing pressure. Seemed to be on 40% of his dropbacks for that game. I got to look up the stat after, but I saw a lot of growth from last year. And the number one area of growth is how much he's protecting the ball. The first 4 games of the season, just 1 interception. And I wouldn't even count that against him because he got detonated on a play action where he turned around and, there's a 500-pound defensive tackle that's eating my lunch right now. I didn't even count that against him. So he's looked good in 4 of the 5 games, but that 5th game is the most recent one, and it showed a lot of tendencies that he did have last season. So while I do think there's growth, I understand why some fans are a little skittish and maybe wondering, oh, God, is he just going to regress immediately? But I'm just not there yet. I need to see it more than just 1 game because those first 4 games happen, Zach. I just can't write those off.
The thing I am looking at is a rushing attack that rivals UCLA's for one of the worst in the Big Ten in terms of what they did last week against Nebraska. You can perform more. 84 net yards. Now, if you look at the numbers, 145 yards, you get a lot of lost rushing yards to Aidan Chiles because of all those sacks. He lose 43. Is this a true running attack? Was it just Nebraska taking Chiles down? Are the numbers legit? They had a 2.2 yards per carry average. A lot of that hurt because of Aidan Chiles. What's the number? Is the rushing attack legit? Is it bad? What's the numbers for a bad UCLA defensive front against the run?
Well, do you know who else is a bad front against the run? Nebraska. And that's what we looked like. Yes, the sack numbers take away from the rushing yards, but all around, it was not a great day running the ball for Michigan State. And that's been a very hot and cold unit so far this season. Looked really good against Western, looked against Boston College, horrible against Youngstown, really bad in the first half against USC, then really great in the second half against USC. So all in all, I think this is a below average run unit, which is a bummer because like our center is really good. We have a good interior offensive lineman. I like our running back, actually. I think he makes really good cuts. Does he have the breakaway speed? No, but I think all in all, he's been solid so far this season. But man, that was really underwhelming last week against a unit that has let other teams run pretty wild against them. So I'm not sold, but they have to be good because, well, you got to have play action and you got to have a running game to support the passing game. So Zach, can you guys like miss some tackles this week, please?
Oh yeah. UCLA loves to miss tackles. Let me just go watch Drew Aller break some tackles or watch UCLA the first few games. Just watch those. But the Bruins do have new play callers defensively and offensively since those last couple of games. I'm going to ask you this. When it comes to November 2025, early December 2025, will we see Jonathan Smith's name seriously considered for the UCLA opening? I
don't think so.
Is it one of those where it's souring? He's like, let me go jump and get a fresh clock. Go back to SoCal. Is that one of those opportunities or no?
The last time I joined you for a chat, we did talk about this. If anyone missed the show, I said I would put it at a 5% chance Jonathan Smith goes to UCLA. Let's say the timeline goes, people are souring on Jonathan Smith. He's feeling the heat. Some people for UCLA have already said no to that job. They reach out to Jonathan Smith. They want to pay what is now a $3 million buyout to take him from Michigan State. That reality is becoming more and more true. So I guess I'd go 5% to like 10 or 15% at this point. But I don't know. On one hand, I think UCLA maybe can do a little bit better than Jonathan Smith, perhaps. And I also don't think Jonathan Smith would want to start just another rebuild this quickly into his career. And by the way, like if he gets fired from Michigan State eventually, if it's this year for $31 million or next year for $20-something million, like that's still a pretty good check to not do any work. So I don't
go do TV for a little bit.
Go do. He needs a better personality for TV. He needs to. Because that's another thing driving Michigan State fans crazy, too. It doesn't drive me as crazy, but, like, he's a pretty bland, dry person, and that's rubbing some people the wrong way. Whatever.
I mean, this could have been a matchup between the most boring head coaches in the Big Ten.
That's a really good
and
point.
that definitely changed because Tim Skipper is literally, he's very chipper. He's Tim Skipper. Like, obviously he brings a little cliche, but he brings the energy and the good vibes to UCLA. Otherwise, this would have been the battle of very boring head coaches who don't know how to tailor to the media. And that's just not the case anymore. Tim Skipper, very media trained, been an interim coach before. So it's very interesting to see, how much does personality affect a team? Sometimes you need the chill personality, and sometimes you see James Franklin, you're like, we see the same excuses again and again. Like Penn State, they might be on the verge of firing him thanks to Nico Iamaleava and UCLA. Like, imagine that. Who would have thought that prior to the season? Nobody.
My God. Have you seen, I looked it up today. Actually, this is why I'm just so hit to it. The James Franklin buyout, $56 million. You guys over there, UCLA, might have just squeezed $56 million out of the donors in Happy Valley. How do you sleep at night knowing that?
Well, I sleep at night knowing that we did our own bad thing coaching wise, and we would love to have James Franklin at UCLA have some stability for I'd love to have James Franklin. I know Tim Skipper's put his hand in for that. I mean, it's funny, but UCLA's got their own problems. They got to figure out with mask a little debt, find the right guy. The amount of money that is going to be paid potentially to get rid of James Franklin is the amount of money the Bruins have to pay to get people in the Rose Bowl. So we'll see what happens.
Small problem. All right. What two talking heads would be if we didn't leave people with a prediction really quick? Do you got a prediction for this Saturday? I'm scared. I'll say it. I'm scared.
I will say this. Every prediction I've said has been wrong. So whoever I choose, the team should be afraid. I've chosen the last 5 UCLA games wrong. Obviously, the Penn State game makes a lot of sense for me to choose wrong. I don't think anybody would, the score was way off. I said Penn State 49-7. I was a little off on one of those things. But I'm going to go, I think UCLA plays well. And it's like Michigan State 28-24. The Bruins have to prove it, and I think 24 points, which seemed like a stretch for them to even get, but they just put up 42 on Penn State. I wonder with more tape, and now UCLA is they should have Michigan State's attention. They're coming off a loss. Yeah. UCLA is coming off a big win. You can't just walk in this game and be like, oh, this is legit. You see teams get a big upset, and generally next week you might see them get blown out or lose because they had that team's attention after a win against Penn State. So I would think Penn State puts UCLA in the map. Michigan State, will, I think, move the ball. But UCLA could easily win this game. They just put it on Penn State. I just am going with the reverse jinx.
I just need this game to be over with already. I can't believe I have this many chest pains over this game. The heck, man. Why'd you guys have to beat Penn State and just make this happen? I'm going to go Michigan State 30. UCLA 27 in a game that never feels comfortable. But damn it, that's a tally mark in the win column. So I don't care if they win by 1. I don't care if they win by 21. I just need to see a victory some way, somehow, Zach, or we're going to have some upset Spartans again. Anyway, guys, hey, no matter what happens, catch us both after the game. Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer doing fantastic work over there at Locked On UCLA, and I'm doing just what I'm doing over here at Locked On Spartans. But, guys, until then, take care of yourselves. Enjoy the rest of your build-up to game day. Go green. And what do you guys say over at UCLA? I always forget.
We have an 8 clap, and then we say 4's up, go Bruins.
I feel so uncultured. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry, guys. All right, see you next time.